see that Mercedes SUV right there, right? In fact, there are 4 vehicles in a row. Do they have a choice? They stripped this one, but that worked pretty good, I'm pretty sure.
That's right, lots of signs is on the houses too. It's PCA, the Humane Society. So do you think people made a conscious decision to stay? Sure they did. Some of them had the means. They could have literally made reservations in a hotel in another state, driven there. Now, if you're a person who's retired, and retired about 10 years, do you think they would have the strength to come back and, let's say, start all over again? No, no. And with the new requirements that's coming out, like in that Lakeview neighborhood, houses have to be raised at least 3 feet. So you have people coming back with questions that make sense like this. If I raise my house 3 feet, remember I had 10 feet of water in my house. Do I only get 7 feet of water in my house now? So you want regulations that make sense. Look at all this grass. One big ghetto. But this wasn't like this pre-Katrina. This was a middle income neighborhood. A lot of the houses paid for. Saw grandchildren playing in the yards. Things like that. I'm going very slowly because of these streets. Now they have FEMA trailers, but look at them all around the trailers. How grown up. This house has a hole in the roof too, on the corner here. It tore this house down. It had a swimming pool in the backyard. It was like belly. I mean, literally made sort of a U, so to speak. It had a big hole in the roof. It had a satellite dish on it too. And right now, they're growing these fish that they could put in the swimming pool that would eat the lava for the mosquitoes around the city. Because, you know, that became a problem too, the mosquitoes and all of the standing water. They redid this roof. It had a hole in it too. This one has a hole in the roof, and the one on the other side had a hole in the roof. A lot of people decided to stay. Consciously made that decision. In front of us and across the street, that is St. Joseph's, for the Sisters of St. Joseph. They had a fire about a month and a half ago, and look at that roof. It just caved in. I don't think the sisters are coming now. That is the provincial house of Sister Helen Prayshon. Remember her? She wrote Dead Man's Walking. That's her provincial house right there. These water lines tell the story. London Avenue Canal is directly in front of us. It breached in 2 places on each side of the canal. And once again, there are 73 neighborhoods in New Orleans, and most neighborhoods are anchored by a little strip mall. The only thing that's operational in this mall is this. A washateria. FEMA trailers don't have washer and dryer. You need to literally come out and do that yourself. So that means the water was up pretty high where we are right now. And as we cross here, turn to the left and look down the neutral ground in the middle of the street. Look at all those things. What would it be like for rebuilding? What about the neighborhood programs? How effective are they in giving their input into it? Show you about conscious decisions. Here's a family that made a conscious decision. Isn't that a hole in the roof right there? What's sitting in the under the carport? I bet those worked pre-Katrina. See the point? Now you notice they didn't come back and touch anything in that house. The anniversary date was last month on the 29th, so it's set for demolition. If they don't come back and show it real soon, they're going to demolish that house. So what will the future be like for housing in New Orleans? Good question. These new rules that have been set in by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers when it comes to raising a house, What would that look like in New Orleans to raise one's house? We saw one look at that when we first entered in Lakeview, when we saw that modular home. That was done right and done well, don't you think? It was pretty good. On the bottom was the garage, but also storage space too. So what would it be like? Now some are not going to be as astute in redoing their homes when it comes to raising them. Is this what it's coming down to? Like this? Remember, to raise a house, that fee starts at $20K and above. If I'm 80 years old, I have a few medical problems, what would it be like to walk up that stairwell with some groceries? That's not going to work in New Orleans, I don't think. On the left, see the water line on that house? So that means the water was actually above these houses. It came down and settled there. That's how high the water was in this area you are right now. Personally, I understand there's a need to raise a house. But why did they raise that house? I'm still trying to figure that one. Why didn't they just start completely over? You know, with that situation. Now remember, this housing that you're seeing were once apartments too. Down there to the left, they've raised that house. Can you see it 2 blocks down to the left? They raised that house. The second story is now the third story on that house down there. Now, some people kept this housing up pretty well. Some didn't do well as owners. I think you can tell the difference in those who did and didn't. This is the University of New Orleans, directly in front of you. After Camp Leroy Johnson left, then this university was placed here in this property. To the right, that's Benjamin Franklin offering disaster management as a degree. Maybe some of our former heads of FEMA could have used a degree in that. Now, as you take a look, this is where the students live. This is for students. Right, dormitories. For single students. Well, it's co-ed. That was dorms for married students over there. Up until about March, there were trailers on that lot. There are some cars there now, but there were some FEMA trailers. A good bit of them. They moved them, and where they brought them to, I have no earthly idea. Now, I want to turn here. We're going to go back over the 17th Street Canal. And as we go over this canal, we're going to be going into the Lake Terrace section of Gentilly. Remember, we showed you Lake Terrace when we first crossed Bayou St. John? The flood walls, those beams were down 17 feet deep. Now they're going at least 60 feet deep right now and making a T-beam structure at the bottom of the wall, which is what's supposed to be much stronger. Why didn't we do that at first? On the right of you, floodgates being constructed. On the left of you, where the 2 cranes are on the right side, that's the breach. On the left side, they're bracing that wall because it was that wall. But on the left of you, as we come down, take a look at some of the beams that came out of this wall. Right here. These are the old beams that came out of the original wall. Take a look at that. If you build a house on the ground, you drive your pilings 30 feet. Those are only 17. I'm not an engineer, but something doesn't compute. Upper middle income and above. This is Lake Terrace neighborhood. But it didn't matter if one had 1 feet of water or 10 feet of water. The house, the same thing has to occur in that house. You have to take all of that flooring out. All the furniture has to go out. All the appliances has to go out. And think about all the pictures, the memories. Can you ever replace that? I don't think so. You remember the thing you learned about Hurricane Katrina when it comes to safety deposit boxes? Banks are fireproof, but they're not. So all those papers that you need to conserve, why don't you just put that in those plastic bags to make sure that water don't get into that too, even though it's in the safety deposit box. And look at the brick. Remember, you should think about the integrity of the brick. Look around at all of this brick. Cracking in spaces, some places it's just falling apart. So even though one put that house back together, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the line, will that wall just begin to crumble? It's a good question. We're going to make our stop in about 5 to 6 minutes at City Park. Schools haven't returned. But I'll give this church one thing. They've still been remodeling this place. How high was the water in this area? Let's give you an idea. Look to the right. Where is that X? That gives you an idea how high the water was in this area where you are. And this is no scrungy neighborhood either. Middle income and a little above going behind you. Coming back quicker than others, but we only can do this one house at a time, one neighborhood at a time. The Archdiocese has announced this school isn't coming back. This is St. Francis Cabrini. The parish will not come back. The church, school, the life center, and the elementary school and the high school will not come back. How high was the water? Keep looking up to tell you how high the water was. Right turn to the next red light. Lots of trees came down in this city too. Fell on houses, did a lot of damage here inside of New Orleans. But then there were a lot of pets that needed to be rescued. Remember, when the people that didn't leave, they had this mentality. 3 days. We'll be gone 3 days. Pre-Katrina, a person made a reservation in a hotel. Could they take a pet in most cases? No. Couldn't take a pet. Had the impression that it'd be gone in just 3 days. So they put that pet in the room with 3 days of food and 3 days of water, but it was at least a month and a half before we could come back. HSUS, Humane Society, SPCA, 1 of 5 found, 2 dead. Those are pets. But our wetlands disappearing at alarming rates here inside the city. But this New Orleans is still important. There's a need to rebuild New Orleans. In 1803, our president thought New Orleans was important. That was his main reason for buying all of that property. Napoleon Bonaparte said, you have to take all the ports of 15 states. And he said, okay, I'll take that, so long as I have this New Orleans. He thought of that port. How important was the port to the economy of the United States of America in 1803? Today, the Port of New Orleans is number 2 in the United States and number 4 in the world. You have Rotterdam, Holland, Kobe, Japan, New York City, New Orleans right now in this 21st century. New Orleans is still important to the United States of America. When this hurricane ended, did you notice that the prices of a lot of things went up? Gasoline, heating oil. BP in Alaska shut part of its system down. Their system totally accounts for 8% of the oil in the United States of America. Uptown or upriver. Right now we're still downtown or downriver. Now, as we cross the light, if you turn to the left, you're looking toward the river. There is all the hotels and everything down there. It's federal, done by the benevolent associations and the social clubs of New Orleans. When they take a person to the graveyard, it's in a solemn fashion. Create a new urbanism. That started pre-Katrina. All the projects that we're passing, every last one of them has been closed. There are fences over certain sections of them, but new construction has been set underway under most of them. And we're going to show you what that's like. We're going uptown to what is called River Gardens. We're going to get into that truck corridor. All right, visual houses, you're going to get into phase 3 and then phase 4. Total construction for the whole thing will be 2008 is the total end date for producing everything. Well, let's look at the apartments. Now, this means that a person on one side can live there with a little Nissan Sentra, and a person on the other side can live there with a Jaguar. That's what that means. New urbanism, as it's called. But these houses are historically correct for New Orleans. Now, maybe the Ninth Ward can come back like this. Take a look at this house on the left. This is a Camelback. The first section of the house is at street level, but the second level of the house has a second story. Camelback. You also see Italianate capitals. This is Italianate style of architecture that goes going from the top to the bottom. Greek Revival style of architecture. The greens, the mustard yellow, the grays, That Caribbean look, aren't these the colors of New Orleans? And the styles of New Orleans? First, that person who lived there on Section 8 and that person right next door can make $65,000 a year. I mean, it's just the way that's been designed. And there are rules. Look around. Just look for graffiti. If you look behind each set of apartments, there are driveways with individual parking. So the Lower Garden District, that's where we are.